So something a little different for Tacky Talk this week. We're taking it on the road. Tacky Chan, the state representative here for Quincy. What's going on, Tacky?
Hey, Joe, it's good to see you on the road. Where, as you can tell, I'm inside my car, and I put a tie and jacket, and my hair is actually done properly. So,
Yeah, it's amazing, and the video is actually clearer than at home, so it looks good.
yeah, no, the benefits of 5G with no cell phone interruption where I am. So, I'm sitting at the WCB Channel 5 parking lot. We're going to be taping a show on community conversation on Asian racism with Michelle Wu, the city councilor, Paul W. Lee, who is actually from Chinatown, but he just retired from, I believe, Goodwin Proctor law firm, and then Angie Louie, who runs Asia Community Development Corporation. So two of us are local, two of us are not, and we're going to have some hard conversations today about Asian racism, and it'll be on television on Channel 5 at 8 p.m., of course, streaming on the website at some point.
Speaking of that, I know in Washington, the Senate actually did pass some legislation to that effect as well.
Yeah, I'm shocked anytime Congress does anything, quite frankly, at this point in my life. I mean, they're so inert on doing stuff and so afraid to do anything, or just so bickering they can't get anything done. But no, it was a good sign that, they had a near majority vote in the Senate. Many thanks to, the Senator, I can't pronounce names correctly, but, the senator from Hawaii. My ability to enunciate is horrible, but senator from Hawaii, and oddly enough, Susan Collins from Maine,
Hmm.
and hoping, working on a deal to get this done and tightening up some language regarding hate crimes, but most important, hate crime reporting need to be really modernized, and some funding, towards hate crime initiatives. So while it's perceived largely as an anti-Asian issue, it's actually not. This is actually a bill to actually impact all marginalized people regarding race, gender, well, basically any kind of marginalized community's bias as a target for a crime.
Right, it gives it a priority. I know with the Justice Department to investigate and to prosecute, if it turns out to be a legitimate violation.
Yeah, and this is on top of existing state hate crimes laws. I mean, 40, I think 45 states, and DC has some variation of a hate crime law. But I mean, there's one common thread, which is what we're dealing with in Massachusetts, that is intent based. So people are like, yeah, well, crimes are intent based. There are a couple of very small exceptions, but most crimes are intent driven. And determining intent of crime is a big part of whether what the motive of the crime is. So, one of the challenges of hate crimes is that hate crimes is intent only, meaning that sole intent is the only factor. And as a result, we've seen this happen already in Atlanta, where the defense attorney told his client, say sex addiction. And now what happened in Atlanta shootings, they demonized women implying they're prostitutes with no evidence. And then he tries to absolve himself of a hate crime despite targeting 3 locations the day before, as well as, specifically shooting people, but predominantly Asian women. And then now they're trying to claim a affirmative motive because they're on camera. I mean, it's not like they can deny he was there, but they're trying to avoid a hate crimes charge by claiming sex addiction. The motive is not racially biased. The motive is psychological issue over sex. And again, gaslighting the victims as a result. So this is actually a huge problem in the hate crimes law that we're trying to address in Massachusetts, and it's very nuanced, very complicated statute to sort out. But you think about it, if you've been subject to a crime and they claim sex addiction as the reason for their reasoning of the crime, I promise you, this is not this is going to be a very common defense on people who hurt or attack marginalized communities.
Yeah, it's a loophole. Certainly, that I know they're trying to close when it comes to that, and it's a prosecutor's bane, I'm sure, trying to prosecute a case like that.
That's absolutely correct. The police department's challenge, of course, is to come with the charges, and one of the challenges is the police are the ones who take first crack at intent, right? Try to figure it out. The prosecutor has to move from there to challenge the affirmative defenses of the defendant regarding the motive of the crime. So, if we give better guideposts for police departments to identify what a hate crime is, followed by giving prosecution also clearer guideposts, it will keep from what we call mixed message crimes.
Hmm.
I got him away to shoot 5 black people. I'll shoot at 1 white person just to get off the hate crime charge, right? I mean, in the FedEx shooting in Indianapolis, people have lost sight the fact that 4 Sikh out of the 8 were murdered. And I know it was a suicide in the end because, they didn't bring the guy in. But I mean, that was not an accident. Sikh are very distinctive because of their turbans. And the Sikh community has been attacked a lot since 9/11, like a lot nationally, by everybody because of the false belief that they're terrorists. They're actually Indian. They're South Asian. So, and the Sikhs are not Muslim because they're Sikh. It's their own religion, Sikhism.
Right.
So, I talk about anti-Asian issues in this country and, how it's part of baseline culture. And again, I repeat, the idea of turbans comes largely from movies like Lawrence of Arabia and movies like Aladdin, the animated movie, because they wear turbans despite being in the Middle East. Well, that's completely fiction. It's culturally incorrect.
Bringing it home locally, I don't know if you're aware, Tacky, that here in Quincy, Granite Telecommunications is making a donation, $50,000 to Quincy Asian Resources and the Boston Chinatown Neighborhood Center, specifically to help those agencies, combat anti-Asian racism. How important do you think it is for local private industries to take a stand?
I think it's very important, not just because we're a growing community in Quincy, especially in Quincy, because we're projecting well over 30% in the census for Asian Americans, but also to reaffirm the fact that businesses will not tolerate hate. And while we can't solve all the world's problems overnight, and we've discussed this every single podcast about this stuff, but it's a good example that I hope other people will follow in the private business world to support local agencies that knows the local population to help work and understand and teach people about why anti-Asian exists, right? And this is a big part of our history. As Grace Lee mentioned at the Quincy rally, everybody should be learning their Asian history in America, about the Japanese, the Koreans, the Chinese, the Indians, the Filipinos, and so many others that it's not taught. So we're left with popular culture to teach us this. As I pointed out, the movie Aladdin, the Lawrence of Arabia, but I also point out, Full Metal Jacket, made popular the term, me love you long time. It's one of those funny phenomena where everybody knows the term, but they don't know where it comes from, but it instantly associated with Asian prostitution. And that is not a good instinct to have, folks, where your first instinct's that term, and suddenly that instinct after that is that we've got to dignify this demographic.
Yeah,
and that's not from our culture. That is created through Hollywood.
Right, and it obviously it taints the way you view a certain group of people, and you see it through that lens.
I call it unconscious bias. That's my term of the day.
Yeah.
I mean, I think people can spot flat out blatant racism, but I mean, unconscious biases is the real challenge here. Is that it's become such a norm, you don't realize you're hurting people. And this is not new. I mean, we can talk about people with disabilities. We can talk about domestic violence. We can talk about voting rights. We can talk about a lot of other things that were considered the norm at one time, right? Women weren't allowed to vote, right? We all know this. But most people don't realize Chinese weren't allowed to vote to 1943, and then Asians couldn't vote to 1952. So, no, women weren't the last. White women could vote, but people of color, women couldn't. And, of course, the Voting Rights Act in 1965 really started changing everything in terms of how national voting. And of course, no surprise to people watching. I'm very disturbed by watching other states, try to make it harder to vote, despite the fact they were enormously successful in security, enormously successful on process and procedures to have a successful election. But it's kind of shocking that if you're so successful, why are you guys clawing back on things that you claim failed, but you claim success? I mean, this is the irony of some of the politics in other states, that it's very hypocritical. We were great. We're going to take it away.
Right.
And all it hurts is people trying to get a voice out.
Yeah.
That's all it hurts in the end.
Has there been any movement on Beacon Hill with regards to expanding voting options here in Massachusetts outside of, once the emergency declaration passes?
Yeah, there's been people filing things that it's called the Votes Act, which including same-day registration and myriad other issues that Secretary Galvin, who's our chief election officer, is supporting a lot of the different provisions in there. I won't say supports every provision, but supports a lot of these different provisions, and he's looking at it closely to see what makes sense in the practical world. But again, it needs a constitutional change for us to change absentee ballots to be a permanent mail-in function. So whether a constitutional amendment provision will be coming forward on the floor this session to vote on, and then vote again next session to prepare for the 2026 ballot would probably be, 2026, 2021. We voted this year, get 20. We could have it ready for the 2024 ballot if we able to vote in two separate sessions. So I don't know if we're going to get the committees were just getting bills last week. Some committees have moved quickly on some COVID-related bills and hearings, and I call it a little low-hanging fruit right now. My committee is trying to get my bills ordered. I'm over 300. I think we're at 300 so bills. So we're trying to get them ordered right now and start hearings in June. So it's kind of a stay tuned. As committees are moving forward, we'll see. We don't know if we're going to have, but we'll see if there will be a constitutional amendment recommendation.
Okay. Any movement at all on the so-called, millionaires tax in Massachusetts?
We took a vote on that last year. If we want to get on the ballot this year, not this year, 2022, we would have to take a second vote this legislative session. There's been no schedule yet for that. We do have to have 3 constitutional conventions by Constitution. We have not seen a calendar yet for the constitutional conventions. So once bills are heard and processed, then they'll be making a recommendation. If there's a constitutional amendment change, then obviously it'll be put on the calendar for the constitutional convention, and we'll wait to see if it's moved forward on the calendar. So same thing, like the millionaire's tax, we'll know when we get the notice it's going to happen. So it still has to go through the same process as a bill review.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the vaccine rollout in Massachusetts. Tacky, the governor, I think just yesterday said that Massachusetts has the lowest vaccine hesitancy rate in the country.
Yeah, that's a good sign, but any hesitancy is obviously frightening. Obviously, we'd have to have no hesitancy rather than some hesitancy. I think the governor's implementation of a public education campaign is essential. Elected officials and big celebrity figures and sports figures and medical personnel getting vaccines is very important to remind the public that we're doing it, we're still here. Don't be afraid, and it can save your life. The goal is not to die, folks. I mean, it's kind of the standard we're using. Don't die. So, obviously, I was talking about J&J, and then got kicked in the teeth after they got suspended while the FDA review regarding some blood clots. But again, there's 6 cases out of millions as of my last look at. And so far, to my knowledge, anybody who's been vaccinated and got COVID has not had to go to the ICU so far, to my knowledge. So, that's a big deal. It keeps the strain off the hospital system. And I think most of us can live not feeling well as opposed to dying. So it's being hooked up to a ventilator. It's pretty horrific when you're watching the news. So, again, I encourage everyone to get their vaccines. I would like to see the hesitancy rate go down. And, if we stay on course, we could hit herd immunity maybe by May-ish, maybe June, maybe. We might actually have maybe like a semi-normal summer. If we hit herd immunity.
Yeah,
so it's up to you all.
That's the hope anyway. I know the president is hoping for the 4th of July. That's kind of his target goal, I know, in the administration, and it appears to be on track if the pace keeps up. Although there is some reports now of more supply than demand.
Yeah, it depends where you are. That's driven by vaccine hesitancy. It isn't because there isn't people that isn't eligible to get it. It's just people won't do it. And the J&J, again, it's a kick in the teeth because people suddenly have hesitancy because of the fear of the vaccines. And, right now, take any vaccine. I don't care if you're here or overseas. The vaccine's available and it's safe, and you're willing to take care of yourself and keep an eye, talk to your doctor. If something not feeling well, call your doctor right away. Do the smart thing. But, people tend to not call the doctors if something changes and not feeling well. That's what gets us in trouble. So, and the other sobering news this week is we talked to the state immunologist, the legislature did, on our conference call. And the variants are really becoming a dominant strain. I mean, we're at 31% of all most recent sampling, which I believe was about 2 weeks ago, is a variant, of which the UK is the dominant variant, followed by California, and followed by Brazil.
Hmm.
So we're talking, somewhere between 15% more infectious rate on the UK one alone. So now we're racing against the variants. So the sooner we get vaccinated, the variants can't catch hold, and at 50 to 70% higher spread rate. I mean, it moves like faster than wildfire on a dry day.
Right.
So that's why this vaccine hesitancy, is concerning, because you got to get you have to get to herd immunity even faster.
Yeah, the governor also is talking about possibly, changing some of the restrictions in a couple of weeks. Do you think that that's a smart move right now?
I think I do think we should move slow, because I don't want to go backwards. And that's always been my big fear about the reopening. As we've seen this past winter, we start making progress. People don't do the right thing, and you don't need a lot of people not to do the right thing. And suddenly you have a mini super spreader, and then the whole thing goes backwards.
Yeah.
That's the fear I have.
Do you think the vaccine rollout has been equitable in Massachusetts, Tacky?
I think one of the major challenges I hear again is getting to a vaccine, right? I mean, the governor's folks regarding the boards of public health was not a good move in a lot of the legislature's mind, because boards of health have been gearing up. Working with community health centers has been successful. People that we trust, doctors groups, rolling was successful, but the pharmacies were a little slower because the feds control the distribution of the pharmacy vaccine. So when you get to less dense areas, it's a bit concerning because you got to drive there. And I think the most effective part I'm hearing is once you do get there, it's very efficient. You're not waiting in line like you see in California or the Midwest states, for like hours on end. The most talked about thing I hear from folks is the efficiency on the vaccine rollout. So when the vaccine scheduling nightmare, let's call it what it was, the nightmare, when people actually got to the vaccination sites, doesn't matter where you were, it's been extremely efficient, and the record keeping has been very good. Everyone got their cards, and they're recording the computer system. I had the experience with my mom when she was eligible at age 78 with pre-existing conditions. Very efficient when we got the test medical. So I've been hearing the same story over and over again. Even the CVS on Beale Street in Wallaston heard no complaints about the process. Very efficiently done. So, I mean, as you see in news, on national news, other states are just dealing with like lines, cars and lines. And thankfully, on the administrative end, the doses has been extremely good. So, again, I encourage people to do this. I know employers have people that have to work, but you're better having workers that are healthy and safe than not working at all.
Yeah. Just wanted to get an update from you on the current state of unemployment in Massachusetts, Jackie.
I think the number is 6.8%.
Okay.
So for people who don't remember, it seems like a decade ago, pre-pandemic, our unemployment was under 3%. It was in the mid-twos. So, we are far, far away from when we had the booming economy prior to pandemic. And, certain jobs I think would be very challenged. For example, we talked to the hotel industry this week. Their normal normal occupancy rate is about 68%. 2020, the occupancy rate reduced to 38%. And it's been floated by a couple of things at 38%, largely because some hotels, including thankfully for the Howard Johnson in Wallaston, where actually down the street from me, was willing to take COVID patients and shelter homeless people under federal money. And we collect taxes on that, guys. I mean, part of this federal stimulus money to help COVID placement of people that are need to be isolated, as well as people who are homeless, is tax money for the state paid by the federal government. So that helps. And of course, the film industry reactivating in the fall was an enormous benefit. Don't Look Up used over 15,000, I think 400 plus nights in hotels. If those didn't get those nights, the industry would be even worse shape. But I'm very concerned about the mid-sized independently owned hotels and motels located in places like Western Mass, in the Springfield area, because I mean the Basketball Hall of Fame is a very popular attraction, but they also have their convention center there. Same thing in Worcester. So while they're not the Heinz or the Boston Convention Center, these smaller convention centers do have their own venues, and those smaller motels and hotels do benefit from that. So, we don't see a big change in hospitality. International travel, I don't know if you guys look at the map of international travel, but no one's going anywhere still. And the budget, we put some more money in, $5 million to help the hospitality industry. And actually, I added an amendment in to help travel agents. And travel agents took about 99.9% business loss.
Yeah.
A lot of that stuff's domestic, not just international. So we really need to look at the travel agency industry as part of our overall recovery hospitality, beyond hotels and restaurants. And I think that's, a very important conversation. I think we set aside $4 million for funding for advertising. We really need to promote ourselves, especially with domestic travel, as we get closer and closer to urban community, that we are able to get people to come to visit Massachusetts and spend their money here.
Yeah. Do you think, will Quincy benefit from that? I know Quincy has its very first tourism director on staff now.
It should. I mean, Quincy has a lot to offer, as with the various historical sites, and foot traffic created by tourism, helps small businesses locally. So promoting the whole state, is very important. And I think the city using tourism money. I think the city got small. I got to look it up. I remember seeing an email about Quincy getting a small tourism grant from the state already to remind folks this is another destination to come to. And National Park Service is our key partner, right? Because they run the museums and everything else. So
Right.
Hopefully National Parks comes fully online this summertime to help us out on that.
Yeah, I haven't heard from them as of yet. Well, typically they'd be open already. I think Patriots Day weekend was their traditional opening, but so far nothing.
Yeah, it's a very different time and everything's in flux. So again, I mean, vaccination is so important because it helps us reopen our economy.
Anything on the state budget negotiations to report on?
But amendments came in were filed on Friday this week. Ways and Means is looking at the amendments. We start debate 11 a.m. roll calls via telephone secure system on Microsoft Teams. And we don't have a deadline of when we're going to end the night being on the phone. I mean, I don't know about you all, but being on the phone for endless hours is pretty hard after a while. I won't lie to you all. I mean, I'm missing being back in person where I can do other in-person work with my colleagues that you really can't do in this format. You really can't. So we're scheduled for the whole week next week. I don't know if it's going to go every day. I don't know what time we're going to end. That's always the mystery question. We know we're starting at 11 a.m. roll calls, but we don't actually know when the calls end.
Okay.
So if I'm not picking up my phone, folks, you know why.
All right. I know you've got to get going to your big TV gig, but you should let folks know how to get a hold of you, Tacky.
Again, 617-722-2014, 617-722-2014. Press any button, and the staff can help you out. We'll get the voicemail somehow. Just hit anybody. Obviously, you can email me at tacky.chan@mahouse.gov. My box is filling up between budget requests from constituents and advocacy groups. Now I'm getting testimony coming in on that as well. We do actually have an email for testimony, but people don't know about it yet. So once again, technology. We're trying to get people to know how we've done some changes, how we do things. And of course, definitely check out my Facebook. I mean, State Representative Tacky Chan, as well as my Twitter. Don't social media me messages, please. It's actually easy to contact by phone or directly by email to my regular accounts that we check on a regular basis. It gets confusing when you have to look at too many places at once. And the tackychan.org website. So I think some people have noticed that I've posted a lot of articles on Twitter and Facebook of Asian American stories of racism. Asian American Pacific Island Month is coming in May. It's going to be the second one we're going to lose to the pandemic. Let's be honest about this. The pandemic is going to take this month away. So I think it's very important for these stories to be heard. And as you pointed out, I mean, I'm here to do my big TV day. But I think, the more people hear our stories, the more they kind of understand what's going on in these unconscious biases.
I think you're right. Speaking about it is the first step, and it's hard, I know, for a lot of folks, especially who have been victims of that.
Exactly, and I thank QATV for, broadcasting and putting on their website and the YouTube the Asian event that we held on the 10th with the city and Queens Asian Resources. Great job with them organizing it, as well as the Pan Asian event that occurred slightly later that day. I mean, that was actually one of I think it was a total of 4 rallies around the state that I'm aware of. There might have been more smaller ones, but um, and we're looking to start a Buy Asia Month in the State House. The House Asian Caucus is moving forward on a press release and initiative. You'll probably get something next week to try to encourage people to buy from an Asian-owned business. And I'm not just talking about restaurants and hair salons. I mean, there's a lot of Asian-owned businesses out there. So we're going to probably do a lot of social media of a few places I visit. I did that last year during the pandemic, pre-pandemic, right about this time. Go back far enough by Facebook. But I'm going to be doing a few more posts on this, some places I use, and hopefully my other colleagues in government will do the same thing.
Okay, we'll look forward to that for sure. Not bad for our first Techie Talk on the road, right?
5G is real, folks. That's how we're doing this. But no, I thank you for your indulgence, and obviously the audience dealing with some technical difficulties on my end. But I think it's very good to keep the communication, the best we can, whenever we can.
This is the new normal now. Is the remote communications for sure. We're going to see it. It's going to be a part of our lives forever, I think.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Techie. Be well.
Be well, be safe. I'll talk to you soon, Joe.
Okay.